This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, good evening. Welcome everyone. Bruchim Habayim. Thank you everyone for coming. Okay, we're on. Parshas Vayigash, Matzoi Chanukah. Matzoi Zois Chanukah. So we find something quite remarkable in Parshas Vayigash. The Torah tells us that as Yaakov Avinu is preparing to go down to Mitzrayim, v'yes Yehuda, Shalach Lefanav El Yosef. Yehuda, Yaakov sent before him to Yosef, Lahoiros Lefanav, to instruct before him Goshna, to the land of Goshen, Vayavoyu Arza Goshen. And he comes to the land of Goshen. Very interesting. Let's look at the word Goshna. The word Goshna, of course, means to Goshen. Typically, you would say li Goshen, but there's a rule in Lashon HaKodesh that a hey at the end of a word is in place of a lamed in the beginning. But even so, the Bnei Yissaschar wants to know, sometimes it says li, and sometimes it has a hey at the end. Why in this instance does it say Goshna with a hey at the end and not li Goshen? You're right, they're interchangeable. But haloi davarhu, there must be a reason why at this particular interval the Torah says Goshna instead of li Goshen. And it's well known, the famous remez of the Bnei Yissaschar. So it's still we're still leaving Chanukah. So for example, if somebody washed before, let's say somebody washed on Chanukah, so even if they're continuing to eat now, they would bench still with alanisim. So we're still connected somewhat, because technically you could still be making alanisim. But there's a famous remez of the Bnei Yissaschar. Everybody knows the Minhag Yisrael is to take a little toy, a dreidel, and inscribed on this piece of wood is the four letters, Gimel, Shin, Nun, Hey, right? Nun, Gimel, Hey, Shin, Nois, Gadol, Hayasham. And lo and behold, you look at the word Goshna, and Goshna spells out the letters on the dreidel, Gimel, Shin, Nun, Hey, Neis, Gadol, Hayasham. Okay, very nice. That is a very well-known remez. It's a famous remez. The famous discovery of the Bnei Yissaschar. But moreover, Aboisai, let me ask you a question. What's it doing in Parshas Vayigash? Vayigash, we're already finished with Chanukah. You want to have a remez to the dreidel? It should be in Parshas Miketz. Miketz is always Shabbos Chanukah. Vayigash is not Shabbos Chanukah, usually not. You have Miketz, sometimes Vayeshev. Vayigash, you're already, you're into Asar B'Teves. Why give a remez to the dreidel in Parshas Vayigash? You're a week off. Avar Zmano, Batar Karbane. It's even questionable whether a rabbi is allowed to speak the night after Chanukah and talk about Chanukah. Even then, most people are not interested anymore. But certainly come Shabbos and people forgot about Chanukah, everyone's preparing for Purim already. You go to the Sfarim stores, all the Chanukah Sfarim are already down in the basement. They're starting to bring up the Purim stuff, unless they've already began marketing products for Asar B'Teves. I'm not sure if they have any. They created anything yet, but I wouldn't be surprised. If they have miniature Beis HaMikdashes with holes in them, I don't know what they have. These days it's amazing what they've come up with. But look, whatever people buy, they can make. But still, Rabbi Say, Parshas Vayigash, to have this remez to the four sides of the dreidel, it really got me thinking. So you say, come on, you can't get so hooked up on this remez. It's just a remez to a dreidel. You can make a whole shiur on why the Nun Gimel Hey Shin is in Parshas Vayigash. That's a little bit of a stretch. But then I'm thinking about it more, and going back to Parshas Miketz, it's even more unusual. Because if you look in Parshas Miketz, it talks about when Binyamin comes down to Mitzrayim for the first time, and Yosef sees him. And what does Yosef say when he sees Binyamin? He says, Elokim yachnecha b'ni. So he gives him a bracha of chen, right? Because all the other brothers had a bracha of chen already, because Yaakov Avinu said, Ha'yeladim asher chanan Elokim esavdecha. Fine. And then they sit down and they have a big party, and Yosef HaTzadik gives Binyamin, Masas Binyamin, Mimasakolim Chamesh Yadois. He gives him 5 times the amount. Vayishtu, and they drink. Vayishkaru imay, and they get drunk. Now, what Yom Tov does that remind you of? Purim, that's right. Parshas Miketz. And in fact, the Sfas Emes says that this is a remez to Sudas Purim. So this is mamish backward. Last week, Parshas Miketz, which is Shabbos Chanukah, we have a remez to what? A remez to Purim. This week, Vayigash, which is already Ois Chanukah, we have a remez to Chanukah. I mean, something's off, right? The Parshas are off. Why in the world is there a remez to Purim in Parshas Miketz? Why in the world is there a remez to Chanukah in Parshas Vayigash? In fact, many years ago we gave a whole shiur how there are many, many, many similarities between Parshas Miketz and Megillas Esther. I'll give you a few examples. For instance, you have the expression Kasher Shacholti, Shacholti, like in Megillas Esther. You have Kasher Avadati, Avadati. You have expressions that only appear in Vayisapak. It says in Miketz, Vayisapak. In Megillas Esther, V'yikbetzu Eskol. You have V'yafged HaMelech Pekidim, V'yasar HaMelech Estabatoi. These are expressions that appear only in two places, Parshas Miketz and Megillas Esther. The only problem is, Miketz is not Purim time. Miketz is Chanukah time. Why are there so many similarities between Purim and Miketz? And you want Chanukah, you go to Parshas Vayigash, you get the 4 letters of the dreidel. Even more astounding, Rabbi said, take a look at number 6. So again, you got it? Miketz is all about Purim. Vayigash, you have a remez to Chanukah. Comes this week's Parsha, and now, thank you, Yosef HaTzadik gives everybody clothing. So the pasuk says, look at number 6. L'chulam nasan lo'ish chalifais simalais. To all of them, he gave for each person changes of clothing. Ulevinyamin nasan shloish me'os kesef. He gave Binyamin 300 silver pieces. V'chamesh chalifais simalais. And 5 changes of clothing. In fact, the Gemara Masechta Megillah, why is he giving Binyamin 5 changes of clothing? You only need 1 pair of clothing at a time. So, and it's not a remez to the 5 towns. The 5 changes of clothing, he was not being Marames, the 5 towns. What was the remez? Says the Gemara Megillah, Amar Rabbi Binyamin bar Yefes, remez ramazlai. He's alluding to him. Sha'asid ben latzeis mimenu, that a child is going to go forth from him. Sheyetzim lifnei hamelech, that will come out before the king. The chamisha levushay malchus, with 5 pairs of royal clothing. What does it say about Mordechai? O Mordechai yatzam lifnei hamelech, belvush malchus, tcheles, bachur, vatar zahav gedoyla, v'sachrich boots v'yargaman. Marv Rabbi say, in this week's Parsha, Yosef gives Binyamin 5 changes of clothing, and he's maramis to him that Mordechai will come from him. Could somebody tell me why in this week's Parsha is Yosef HaTzadik being maramis to the hero of Purim? It's very interesting. I know we have 2.5 months to Purim. We could wait, let's recover for some Chanukah. You know how long it takes to get the oil out of the glass? So people who buy the easy, so you just toss everything. But if you don't want to take a mortgage out for the Chanukah menorah, so you have the glass, and then you soak it in soap, and then you put it away for next year. So it takes, until all the oil comes out. My stuff is still, I'm not finished with Chanukah yet. Why? The moment Purim is over, the moment Chanukah is over, we're ready. This week's Parsha, Vayigash, Yosef is being merames to Binyamin, that Mordechai is going to come out from him. Very interesting. So let's think for a moment. Let's set it up. Miketz, Vayishkaru imai, Sudas Purim. This week, a remez to Mordechai. Later on in the Parsha, a remez to Chanukah. I mean, it's backward. If anything, even if the Parshas are not aligned, first give a remez to Chanukah, and then give a remez to... No, we have remezim to Purim, and then a remez to Chanukah. What in the world is going on here? And then we move later on into the Parsha. Kol HaNefesh, all of the souls, Haba liYaakov Mitzrayim, that came to Yaakov, to Mitzrayim, Yoitze Yerechai, those who descended from him, Melavad Neshei B'nei Yaakov, besides the wives of the sons of Yaakov, Kol Nefesh, Shishim Vashesh. All of the souls, 66. That means 66 Jewish men, women, descended to Mitzrayim. Interesting. Of what significance is the number 66? Why 66? So if you remember from 2 weeks ago, maybe some thoughts are coming to your head. But why does the Torah go out of its way to point out that 66 Jews came down to Mitzrayim? What's the meaning of that? What does it represent? The great number 66. Okay, so question for you. Pesach time. Do we talk about Hashem redeeming us from Galus Bavel? No. Do we talk about Galus Madai? Do we talk about Paras? Do we talk about Yavan? Do we talk about... No, we talk about Mitzrayim. And Shavuos, we don't talk about any of the Galusim. And Sukkot, we don't talk about any of the Galusim. And comes the Yom Tov of Chanukah, and every single night we sing thanks to Rebbe for taking us out of all the Galusim. Mitzrayim, Bavel, Paras, Yavan, Edom. I mean, the main song of Chanukah, Ma'is Tzor Yeshuasi, it has 6 paragraphs. First paragraph is about Chanukah. Then we go to Mitzrayim, we talk about Chel Paroi. Then we talk about Bavel, Kate's Bavel, Zerubbabel. Then we talk about Galas Paras. We talk about Haman, Raif Bana v'Kinyana of Ala Eitz Talisa. Then we talk about the Yevanim, and then we talk about Edom. I mean, why are we talking about all these Golasim? This is Chanukah. Chanukah, the Rebbe Hashem redeemed us from Galus Yavan. Why talk about all of the Golasim? What is the meaning of this? What's the connection to Chanukah? So you'll say, it doesn't matter anymore because Chanukah is over. So no, you need to start preparing now. This way, next year, Haba Aleinu L'Tova, you'll know what you're talking about, what you're singing about. Okay. Let me share with you a little-known medrash. Now, there's something called Medrash Chanukah, which is not very common and not easy to access, and it's quoted in a few sources. So the Medrash Chanukah says something very interesting. If you take a look at number 11, it says, Omar HaKadosh Baruch Hu. This is the Medrash for Chanukah. It's published in a Sefer Yalkut Sipurim. It's also brought in Rav Menachem Kasher's Torah Shlema, number 12. And the Medrash says as follows. HaKadosh Baruch Hu came and established the Yom Tov of Chanukah. There was never a Yom Tov until then. Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You, Yevanim, wanted to be Oiker, the 7 Neiros of the Menorah, and the 8 days of Sukkot. I'm going to establish an 8-day Yom Tov of Chanukah through the 7 B'nai Chashmonai. You said anyone who mentions my name will be pierced by the sword. I will establish a Yom Tov that you say hallow for me for 8 days. And about Chanukah, David HaMelech says in Tehillim, Lam Natseach B'neginois Ala Shminis Mizmar LeDavid. So if you want to know where in Tehillim is the Yom Tov of Chanukah Merumaz, it's Merumaz in Parak Vav, Pasuk Aleph, Lam Natseach B'neginois Ala Shminis Mizmar LeDavid. My Rabbi says, does anybody know what parak does this pasuk belong to? It actually belongs to Tachnun. If you ever take a look at Tachnun is parak Vav from pasuk Beis and on. Pasuk Aleph we omit, we skip. Pasuk Aleph of Tachnun, of parak Vav of Tehillim, is Lam Natseach B'neginois Ala Shminis Mizmar LeDavid. Incredibly, what does this pasuk talk about? This pasuk talks about Chanukah. What is Chanukah? Is Lam Natseach by the conductor, B'neginois with the song, Ala Shminis for the 8s. Chanukah is called the Yom Tov of Lam Natseach, B'neginois, Ala Shminis, Mizmar LeDavid. In fact, the Chidah number 13 brings down from the Megala Amukos that if you want to know the soid of Chanukah, the secret of Chanukah is Lam Natseach Al Hashminis. Lam Natseach Al Hashminis. Interesting. That's the secret of Chanukah. Lam Natseach Al Hashminis. So Rabbi said that really got me thinking. Because there is a famous medrash on the pasuk, Lam Natseach Al Hashminis, that says something fascinating. You know what the medrash says, Lam Natseach Al Hashminis? The medrash says as follows. That even though, we'll take a poll. How many Golasim were we in? I'll give you 3 choices. 3, 4, or 5? Who says 3? Who says 5? Who says 4? All right. Okay, so we're doing good tonight. 4 Golasim. Says the Medrash, not really. It's Arba Shehim Shmaina. Really, there are 8 Golasim. Each Golos is a dual Golos. Says the Medrash, Edom is the final Golos. How do we know that there are 8 Golasim? Because it says in Daniel that they saw a monster with a golden head, with a chest and arms, that's 2. With a stomach and legs, that's 2. 2 thighs, 2 feet. That's 8. What are the 8 golosim? Bavel, Kazdi, Babylon, and the Chaldeans. Madai, Paras, Madai, Persia, Media. Yavan, Moikdan, Greece and Macedonia. Yishmael and Edom. So here the Medrash is telling us, a davar nifla, that even though we always say there are 4 golosim, nevertheless, in reality, there are 8 golosim. Each golos has a dual part. There's Bavel, Kazdi, Madai, Paras, Yavan, Moikdan, Yishmael, and Edom. And the Medrash continues, Amar Rabbi Ivoi, Amra Knesset Yisrael Lefnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Ribono Shel Olam. Anu mekalsin lefanecha, we will praise you. Bisha sha'ata mekabei tzoisanu mishmayna galiyos. When you gather us from the 8 exiles, says the Medrash, when God removes us and saves us and rescues us from the 8 golosim, we will sing to Hashem. So I ask you, friends, what do you mean when Hashem redeems us from the 8 golosim? I thought Bavel and Kazdai are over. I thought Paras and Madai are over. I thought Yavan and Moikdan are over. Either we're in Edom, or we're in Yishmael, or we're in both, but we certainly are not in 8 golosim. What does it mean the day will come that God will take us out of 8 golosim? What does this mean? But this really got me thinking. Because if the Megala Amukos says that the secret of Chanukah is the pasuk, Lam Natseach Al Hashminas, and the Medrash says that Chanukah was enacted based on the pasuk, Lam Natseach Al Hashminas, and Lam Natseach Al Hashminis is articulating the concept that there are 8 golosim, then we need to say a brand new novel interpretation in the 8 days of Chanukah that I never saw anywhere and I never heard before. It is clear then, if the Medrash says that the secret of Chanukah is the pasuk Lam Natseach Al Hashminis, and the Medrash says Lam Natseach Al Hashminis is a reference to the 8 golosim, there is no question then that the 8 days of Chanukah somehow are connected to the 8 different golosim. In other words, I'm sure you must have heard, if you weren't born yesterday, there are those who ask, why is Chanukah 8 days? You ever hear such a question? Why is Chanukah 8 days, but the miracle was only 7 days? So based on what we're trying to glean from these midrashim, Chanukah is clearly 8 days because there's a connection between Chanukah and the 8 golusim that the Rebbe will take us out of. Apparently, even though Bavel has crumbled, and Kazdi has crumbled, and Yavan and Moikdan and Paras have crumbled, there is a concept we are still suffering and enduring all 8 of them, and the day will come when Mashiach comes, Rebbe will extricate us from all 8 of them. So now the question is, what does Chanukah have to do with the extrication and the salvation from all 8 golosim? But if this is correct, then we understand immediately, very clearly, something that I never saw explained. Why we sing Ma'is Surah on Chanukah? Why are we thanking Hashem on Chanukah for taking us out of Mitzrayim, of Bavel, of Paras, of Yavan, of Edom? It was just Golos Yavan. No, somehow Chanukah connects to all the Golosim. And therefore the most appropriate time to thank Hashem for saving us from them is on Chanukah. So I invite you to help me explore this. And hopefully, b'siyata d'shmaya, it will become very, very clear. Let us go to the famous Medrash that we've quoted so many times. The Medrash says, Bereshis Rabbah, Perek Beis, Ois Daled, number 15 on your sheets, that Reish Lakish interpreted the second pasuk in the Chumash. V'ha'aretz hoisa soihu, v'avoihu, v'choshach, al pnei sahaim, referring to how many golosim? 4 golosim. Soihu is golos Bavel, Boihu is Galos Madai, Choshech is Galos Yavan, and Al Pnei Sahaim is Galos Edom. Comes the Malach Elokim Tzavakos, comes the Arizal HaKadosh. And the Arizal asks the obvious question. The Medrash forgot to add one of the Galosim. The most obvious, overt, perhaps the worst Galos has been omitted from the list. We always know they're Daled Golosim, Bavel, Madai, right? Bavel, Paras, Yavan, Edom. Fine, you want to make them 8? Make them 8. Each one is 2. But at the end of the day, whatever count you have, whether 4 or 8, it leaves out the most important Galos, Mitzrayim. Why is Mitzrayim never on the list? Why is Egypt never on the list? We were there 210 years. They murdered us. They tortured us. They killed our babies. 80% of the Jewish people did not survive. Why is Mitzrayim not on the list? And the Arizal opens up the world for us, and the Arizal is Megala to us, a very important side. And that is, whenever you see details and whenever you see particulars, there is always a generality, there's always an umbrella that includes all of them. And that is, Mitzrayim is Koilel, all the Golosim. Mitzrayim includes, meaning the 4 Golosim are just subsidiary, they're just secondary, they're just branches of the main Golos Mitzrayim. The main Golos is Mitzrayim. Mitzrayim is Koilel HaKoil, and the 4 Golosim are merely branches of Mitzrayim. Says the Arizal, tremendous side, that the 4 Golusim correspond to Yud Kei Vav Kei. Yud is Bavel, Hey is Paras, Vav is Yavan, Hey is Edom. And what's Mitzrayim? Mitzrayim is what is called the Kutzoi Shel Yud. In the Sifrei Kabbalah, now, there's a misconception what Kutzoi Shel Yud is even. Many people think Kutzoi Shel Yud is the crown on top of the Yud. That's not the Kutzoi Shel Yud. The Kutzoi Shel Yud is, I'm drawing it for me, right? Now you have to look at it backwards. On the bottom of the roof of the Yud, there's a little thorn that comes down. That's the Kutzoi Shel Yud. There's a concept that the Kutzoi Shel Yud includes all the Oisiyos. Mitzrayim is in the Kutzoi Shel Yud. Mitzrayim incorporates all the Golosim. The reason why Mitzrayim is not mentioned separately is because Mitzrayim includes all the Golosim. Rabbi says Arizal, that's why we always talk about Yitzias Mitzrayim, Yitzias Mitzrayim, Yitzias Mitzrayim. We don't talk about Yitzias Bavel, Yitzias Paras, Yitzias Yavan, because Yitzias Mitzrayim is Koilel, all of the redemptions. So Mitzrayim includes all the Golosim, and Yitzias Mitzrayim includes all of the redemptions. And Rabbi say there are many, many ramazim to this idea. For instance, the Chidah in his Haggadah brings right away, in the beginning of Sefer Shemais, look at number 17, Ve'ila Shemais, B'nai Yisrael, Haboim, Haboim. The word Haboim is an allusion to all 5 Golusim. Hey is Hakoil, that refers to Mitzrayim. Beis is Bavel, Aleph is Edom, Yud is Yavan, Mem is Madai. Again, the Igur Dekala, the Bnei Yissaschar, number 19, he points out, Avram Avinu is in Golos in the Eretz Plishtim. He felt that by going into Golos in Eretz Plishtim, Yamim Rabim alludes to the 4 Golosim. Reish is Roimi, Beis is Bavel, Yud is Yavan, Mem is Madai. This Avram Avinu felt by going into Golos in the Eretz Plishtim, it would diminish the amount of time that Klal Yisrael would have to spend in these Golosim. And many of the Balei Remez point out that whenever the Tanakh says the word Rabim, for example, it says, Pari says, Hein Rabim Ata Am Haaretz. Rabim stands for Roimi, Bavel, Yavan, Madai. Or number 21, Vahi Bayomim Harabim. Again, Rabim includes all 4 Golosim. So again, the Daled Golosim are Yud, Kei, Vav, Kei. Where's Mitzrayim? Mitzrayim is in the Kutzai Shel Yud. What does the Torah say when Klal Yisrael comes down to Mitzrayim? Vaya Kutzu Mipnei Bnei Yisrael. They were disgusted. That's a remiss to the fact that Mitzrayim is alluded to in the Kutzai Shel Yud. Okay. Rabbi said we're going to feature a sefer now that we've never featured before. I highly doubt anyone here ever saw it or ever heard of it, and maybe will ever hear of it again. It's, as far as I know, it's not really in print. The name of the sefer is Leked Imrei Kodesh, 8 volumes. These are the typewritten chidushim of all the Belzer Rebbes. Okay? So if you have it at home, please let me know. It's probably a collector's item. We could auction it off in the auction houses and command a big price and hopefully build a new shul across the street. Or you could keep it and donate instead to the new shul. But either one, that's your choice. Says the Belzer Rebbe, Mamish Chidush Nifla. Now, once upon a time I heard Mamish Gadol B'Yisrael say this Chidush over, but he quoted the Chidah. So I got a call this week from the Shvilei Pinchas, or Pinchas Friedman. So I said, I was talking to him, I said, this Chidush that's brought in, it's actually brought in the Pinchas Friedman Sefer, in Shvilei Pinchas, I said, Rebbe, I heard somebody say in the name of the Chidah. He said, Ansholdik Mir. The Chidah doesn't say it. What happened was this person saw it in his sefer. And either he forgot or he didn't want to say this from the Belzer Rebbe, so he blamed it on the Chidah. The Chidah doesn't say it. The only one who ever said this Chiddush is the Belzer Rebbe. This Chiddush is Begeder Ruach HaKodesh. It's unbelievable. Okay, you ready for this? Says the Belzer Rebbe, if the Arizal tells us that Mitzrayim includes all 4 Golosim, then if you think about the episodes of these Parshas that we're learning, you will notice that that's right. Because Mitzrayim includes the 4 Golosim, and we left each Golos, guess what? We left Mitzrayim 4 times also. How's that? In Parshas Vayigash, we leave Mitzrayim. In Parshas Miketz, we leave Mitzrayim to get Binyamin. That's the first time we left Mitzrayim. And in Parshas Vayigash, so Miketz we leave to get Binyamin. And Parshas Vayigash, we leave Mitzrayim to bring Yaakov. And in Parshas Vayechi, we leave Mitzrayim to bury Yaakov. And then in Boi B'Shalach, we leave Mitzrayim for good. Why do you think we left Mitzrayim 4 times? Because since Mitzrayim includes all the Golosim, and each time we leave a Golos, that's also alluded to in the episodes of Mitzrayim, therefore we left Mitzrayim 4 times, keneged the 4 salvations of the 4 Golosim. Comes Hagoyin with Pinchas Friedman Shlita, and he says, let's just clarify this with pinpoint clarity. This is mamish oyoim v'noira. It was worthwhile to come down to this world to hear this. Okay, so if your neshama descended from the olamas ha'oyim to hear this, it was worthwhile to be here. It says Reb Pinchas Friedman Shlita, if you look carefully, 4 times in these parshiyos we go down to Mitzrayim. How's that? In last week's Parsha Miketz, we go down to Mitzrayim. Vayar Yaakov ki yesh shever b'Mitzrayim. So we all went down, except for Binyamin, to get food. That's the first time we go to Mitzrayim. Then in Parshas Miketz, then Yosef says, listen, hey buddies, I don't want to see your face unless you bring Binyamin, your brother. If you don't bring Binyamin, don't bother coming back. So we go down to Mitzrayim and we leave. That's Golos Bavel. We come back down to Mitzrayim with Binyamin. And then we leave to get Yaakov and everybody. That's Golos Paras. Then Yaakov comes down to Mitzrayim in Vayigash. What Golos is that? Golos Yavon. And then when Yaakov dies and we bury him in the Maras Machpelah, that's the redemption from Golos Yavon. Then we come back, that's Golos Edom, and we don't leave until Yitzias Mitzrayim. Says Hagoyin Reb Pinchas Friedman Shlita, now we understand, it's so odd that Yosef says, I don't want to see your face unless I see Binyamin. Don't even bother coming down. Let's say the brother said, do you mind if we come down one time to get your autograph without Binyamin? Then we'll get Binyamin. Why is he so makbid? Don't come down unless you bring Binyamin. Because the answer is, what Golos are we up to? We're up to Golos Paras. What tragedy happened during Golos Paras? The Gzeros of Haman. Who saved us from the decrees of Haman? Mordechai. Where did Mordechai come from? Binyamin. So therefore Yosef says, don't show your face unless you bring Binyamin. Because without Binyamin, without Mordechai, we're going to be stuck here forever. And what does Yosef give Binyamin? He gives him 5 changes of clothing in this week's Parsha, but we're still in Golos Paras. And what's the message Yosef's giving to Binyamin? Your descendant Mordechai is going to save the Jewish people. Why is Yosef being meramis to Mordechai HaTzadik in this week's Parsha Vayigash? Because guess where we are? It looks like we're in Mitzrayim, but really, where are we? We're in Paras. We're in Persia. We're in the Purim story. So what does Yosef do with the brothers? Vayishtu, vayishkeru imai. They have Sudas Purim. Purim, it's Miketz. What are they having Sudas Purim and Miketz? The answer is it looks like Miketz, but it's really in Shushan Habira. It's the second time they went down. The first time they went down in the beginning of Miketz, Vayar Yaakov Ki Yashav Mitzrayim, they go down without Binyamin. That's Golos Bava. But when they come down with Binyamin, Yosef says, let's take out the Yayin. Chayev Inish Besume Bepuraya Adlo Yada Beinor Ham Levarach Mordechai. Yosef says, you better bring Binyamin here. Yosef gives Binyamin Chamesh Chalifa Smolos. He mizmeramis to him. Asid Ben Lotzis Mimcha. That will go out. B'nei Hamelach B'vush Machas Ches L'chor. Marv Rabbi. But then they go and they get Yaakov. They go and they get Yaakov, and they come down the third time in this week's Parsha. And which Golus is in this week's Parsha? Yavan. Oh, now we're in the Chanukah story. So the first thing Yaakov does is he sends Yehuda where? Goshna! Nun Gimel Hashem. First thing is we got to get the dreidel going. This week's Parsha, Yaakov Avinu is coming down with the whole family. That's Golos Yavan. A remez to Nun Gimel Hashem. What's Nun Gimel Hashem doing here? Get the ones, not Shabbos Chanukah. Forget Shabbos Chanukah. We are now descending into Golos Yavan, and this is going to be the Yeshua from Golos Yavan. Therefore, the remez to the Minog Yisrael of the Nun Gimel Hashem is in this week's Parsha. And then the Rebbe Shalom gave me a tremendous matana. Because how many Yidden come down to Mitzrayim? 66. Very interesting. 66. So Tikunei Zohar says that Yaakov is coming down with the koyach of Torah Shebal Peh. Because there's 60 Masechtos in Shas and 6 Sidorim of the Mishnah. But how could you not help but remember what the Maral said? We learned it 2 weeks ago. That the Yevanim had Shlita over the Heichal, because Heichal is Gematria 65. And Yavan is Gematria 66. So Yavan was able to one-up the Heichal. Yavan was able to take over the Heichal, be Matami the Heichal. So Yaakov Avinu knows that. Yaakov Avinu knows this is the third Golus. This is the third time we're coming down. We got to counteract Yavan. How are we going to counteract Yavan? Nun Gimel Hashin. And we're going to send down 66 Yidden Keneged Yavan. That's the significance of Shishim V'Sheish. That's the significance of the 66 Bnei Yaakov that came down from Mitzrayim. Ayam Menor, you think it's random that 66 people came down, Dafka, this time? Of course not. And you could say, by the second time they come down, how many brothers come down? You have 10 brothers plus Binyamin. Keneged, Haman, Vasar Abanov. That's the second time they come down. So that's also Zel Umazeh Asa Laikim. So let's progress a little bit further. So now we're understanding that it's not random that last week in Miketz there's a remez to the Purim Suda, and last week there's a remez to the salvation of Mordechai, and this week there's a remez to Chanukah. It's not when the Shabbos falls out, it's about understanding that if Mitzrayim is koilel all the golosim, then each time Klal Yisrael goes down, it corresponds to another golos. The second time is Keneged Golos Paras, the third time is Keneged Golos Yavan. Marv Rabbi, there's an amazing Gemara Masechta Yuma on Daf Chavtes. The Gemara is commenting on the pasuk in Tehillim, Lam Natseach ala Yelas Hashachar Mizmar LeDavid. Parak Chav Beis in Tehillim. Parak Chav Beis in Tehillim is all about the Purim story, and it compares Esther to the morning star. And the Gemara says, Lama Nimshala Esther la Yelas Hashachar. Why is Esther compared to the morning star? Says the Gemara, just like the morning star is the end of the night, so too, Esther is the last miracle. So Gemara says, what about Chanukah? Chanukah's after Purim. Gemara says, no, we're not counting Chanukah. Chanukah is not allowed to be written down. Right? Chanukah is not allowed to be written down. The only thing that can be written down is what? The Ches Neviim, and Vav Ksuvim, and the Chamesh Megillos. Or, right? Chanukah stands for what? Ches Neviim, Vav Ksuvim, Hey Megillos. That's Chanukah. Or you could say, you know what Chanukah stands for? Chanu Chafei. They stopped when they got up to 25 books. When they got up to number 25, they stopped before. They said only 24 books. You can't have a 25th book. Chanu Chafei. But be it as it may, Chanukah can't be written down. So let's think carefully about this Gemara. The Gemara is saying that Esther is the last miracle. But Chanukah, no, Chanukah doesn't count. Why doesn't it count? Says Reb Shlomo Kluger, and in the past we've said this over from the Sfas Emes, they both say the same thing. Listen carefully. The word Chanukah means inauguration. Inaugurating what? Inaugurating the third Beis HaMikdash. Inaugurating the Yemais HaMashiach. Inaugurating the future redemption. Therefore, like this, Esther is the last miracle of the first era of Jewish history. Chanukah is not... Well, Chanukah, no, Chanukah is from a different era. Chanukah is the beginning of the miracles of the Yemais HaMashiach. The reason why Chanukah doesn't count is because Chanukah doesn't belong to the first era of Jewish history. Chanukah ushers in the beginning of the second era of Jewish history. Chanukah is the inauguration of the third Beis HaMikdash. Rabbi said for the third Beis HaMikdash to come, how many golosim do we need to be extricated from? We need to be extricated from 8 golosim. Chanukah is the inauguration of leaving all 8 golosim. You want to know why Chanukah is 8 days? Each day is moitzi us from another golos. Each day of Chanukah takes us out from Ulam Natseach al Hashminas Mizmar LaDavid. Takes us out of one of the 8 golosim. Chanukah is the preparation for the Geula HaAsida. That is why in Chanukah we sing and we thank Hashem for taking us out of Mitzrayim, which is Koilal all the Golosim, and Bavel, and Paras, and Yavan, and Edom. Chanukah takes us out of all of them. It's the beginning of the second era of Jewish history. What are the 4 letters of Chanukah? Nun, Gimel, Hey, Shin. Gematria what? 358. You know what 358 is? The Nachash. The Nachash is 358. The Nachash put us in the 4 Golosim. Through Chanukah Nun Gimel Hey Shin, it removes us from the Nachash. What does it bring closer? Mashiach is 358. Mashiach is 358. What's going to happen when Mashiach is going to come? The world is going to recognize Hashem Melech, Hashem Malach, Hashem Yimlech, also Gematria 358. So Goshna are the 4 Golosim. As well-known Bnei Yisachar says, Goshna corresponds to the 4 types of Golos. The Guf, which was Golos, Paras, Lahashmid, Lahar the Seichel, which is Golos, Yavan. The Nefesh, which is Golos, Bavel. And then Hakoil, Edom includes all of them. But be it as it may, the Nachash, 358, put us in these 4 Golosim. Through the Kayach of the Nun Gimel Hey Shin of Chanukah, it ushers in the Yemais HaMashiach. It ushers in the era of Hashem Melech, Hashem Malach, Hashem Yimlech, L'Yaylam Vayed. So Yaakov Avinu understands that when he sends Yehuda, not LeGoshen, because LeGoshen is going to throw the numbers off. The Nun Gimel Hey Shin. We're sending you to Goshen. We're sending you, you're going down to Mitzrayim. Mitzrayim is Koilal all the Golosim. And therefore Yaakov Avinu is preparing Yehuda, because Rabbi said the 4 Golosim correspond to which 4 letters? Yud, K, Vav, K. Therefore he sends Yehuda. Yehuda has all 4 letters with the Daled that's able to be ma'ached the 4 letters of Hashem's name. The Arba Golios, they look to remove the Yud, remove the Hey, remove the Vav, remove the Hey. Yehuda has the Daled to connect the Yud, K, Vav, K. So Yaakov Avinu sends Yehuda to be able to set the path and to pave the way to bring Klal Yisrael together through the Yom Tov of Chanukah. Because Chanukah, Rabbi say, listen carefully, when did Yaakov Avinu send Yehuda? Not by Golos Bavel, not by Golos Paras, not by Golos Edom, by Golos Yavan. He's sending Yehuda down by the 3rd Golos. Why the 3rd Golos? Because the redemption from Yavan is the preparation for the redemption of all 8 Golosim. Because Chanukah is 8 days to take us out, Lam Natseach al Hashminas, of all 8 exiles. Rabbi, so let's just end with the following. So the Yevanim go into the Heichal, and they say, Heichal is only 65. But we're Yavan, we're 66. We're going to destroy 65. So we say, no, you're not going to destroy 65. 65, you know who 65 is? 65 is Aleph Daled Nun Yud, that's Hashem's name. Yavan says, what are you talking about? We're 66. You know what 66 is? Galgal. Galgal is the world. The world is like a top. The world is spinning. Who's spinning the world? Who's turning the world? Who's twisting the world? You know what Yavan says? Nobody. It's happening by itself. You guys, you say 65. You say it's Hashem. Yavan says, no, it's above God. It's just happening on its own. It's a galgal, it's a galgal, it's spinning, it's spinning, it's spinning. Who's spinning it? Nobody's spinning. It's 66, it's spinning by itself. So what do we do on Hanukkah? I heard from my son's Rebbe, Rabbi Halbertal. You give the kid this top, you give him the galgal, and you say, hey kid, what's going to happen if you don't spin the top? What's going to happen if nobody spins the top? Is it going to spin? You teach the kid that if nobody spins the galgal doesn't move. It just falls down. Yavan said Yavan is 66 as galgal. It just spins on its own. So we say, no, it's Aleph, Dalet, Nun, Yud, it's 65. What do we do on Hanukkah? Hey, Lamed, Hallel. We say it's 65. It's Aleph, Dalet, Nun, Yud, it's 65. The Heichal is preserved. Heichal is 65. But Yavan says, no, it's a galgal. It spins on its own. And we're Yavan, we're 66. So Yaakov Avinu says, take that. I'm going to send 66 people down by Golos Yavan. At the end of the day, we're going to have to one-up Yavan. We're going to have to move up to 67. So how are we going to do it? So I saw, interestingly, in the Sefer Yafan at Rashas, who's Koivea Chanukah B'nai? Vina, 67. 67, we triumph over Yavan, which is 66. They try to triumph over the Heichal, which is 65. And you always, Rabbi say, you always have to take one step ahead. You got to get one up your opponent. So this is the limud. Rabbi say we're learning a tremendous chiddush. The chiddush is that while the Arizal says Mitzrayim is koilel all the galosim, but if you look carefully, you'll see marumas that there are actually 4 times Klal Yisrael goes down to Mitzrayim. Each time corresponds perfectly to that particular galos. Each time we leave corresponds to the salvation of that galos. And that is why on Chanukah, which is the Chanukah of the third Beis HaMikdash, which is the salvation of all the galosim. Chanukah is 8 days, connected to 8 galosim. Chanukah, we sing about the salvation of all the galosim. Shitaka bizoicha, that through the Yom Tif of Chanukah, through the Kayach of Goshna, through the Kayach of the 66 Nefashos that went down to Mitzrayim, should be zoicha to leave Golos Yavan, and all the 8 galosim should be zoicha to 358. We should be zoicha to Mashiach. We should be zoicha to see Hashem Melech, Hashem Malach, Hashem Yimloich. The Yolam Bad Rabbi say have a great evening.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.